a safety short from the ATA Workers' Compensation Fund.
Hey, this is Michael Smith. I'm with the ATA Work Comp Fund. We're out here today talking about steel pipe loads. This is one of our more catastrophic type injuries where a load shifts down on top of a driver. I'm here with Ben. Ben's going to walk us through situations that drivers should be aware of during this loading and unloading process.
First stage of the loading process is situational awareness. You've got to know what's going on around you at all times. Pipe yards use heavy machinery. There's a lot of blind spots around, and you need to be aware of what's going on around the truck on both sides. The loading and unloading process should always be handled on level ground. Since pipe is round, it will roll downhill, so the more level the ground is, the better off you are. Good personal protective equipment is always your first line of defense when it comes to preventing injury. So anytime you load, you have to abide by the shipper's policies on personal protective equipment. It's highly recommended that you're always in a high visibility vest, hard hat, and good shoes, closed-toed rubber soles and anti-slip soles. Safety glasses are also a good idea as well. Step 2 in the process is to establish communication with the loader operator. Things that you need to consider include hand signals used between you and the operator, but also where you need to stand to stay clear. If you're going to make any assumption about working around a piece of machinery loading your truck, just make the assumption that the operator of that machine cannot see you, and make sure you stay out of the way. The safest place for you to be during the loading process is right back in the cab of the truck. This is where you want to be, this is the safest place to be, but it's not always an option because you'll have to do things to the load as you're loading up. If you can't be in the cab of the truck, a good place to stand is right here, right at the headache rack in front of the drives and in front of the trailer. This way you are clear of the load if it comes off the side of the trailer. You're also clear of the equipment. Just remember to keep your eyes moving while you're here, because in these big pipe yards, threats can come from other situations in other areas than just in front of you. If you can't stand here for whatever reason, the next best place to stand is at the rear of the trailer. From the rear of the trailer, I still got a clear view of everything that's going on. I've got a clean line of sight to the operator, and I'm able to see where and help that operator get this load centered on the trailer. It also gives me an idea of what's going on. The tractor's not blocking my view, but again, I'm gonna keep my eyes moving, keep my head on a swivel, and make sure that I'm paying attention to the other equipment and other trucks that may be operating in my vicinity. Now, as they load up, if you're going to add straps like this one to the belly straps, you may have to do that during the middle of the loading process. Again, this requires good communication with the driver, the forklift, or whatever machinery is loading. The belly straps like this are not an actual requirement by DOT for this type of load, but it is most definitely best practice. Good rule of thumb is if you go 3 tiers or taller, you always want to belly strap the second layer. This is one of those things where you'd rather have this strap in place and not need it than need this strap and not have it. If you keep these lower tiers from rolling around, the top's going to be more stable as you head down the road. Also on these loads, you've got to make sure the chocks are in place. Make sure you take a look at each chock, make sure they're secured. You want to bump them like this. It's always good to have hammer and nail with you. If one of these is loose, you can drive nails back in it, or if you've got any space between the pipe and the chock itself, you can take this chock off, slide it in, you make contact, and bring that. You don't want any slack on these chocks, and you want to make sure they're in good shape. All these are in good conditions, no cracking, but a lot of times they'll crack right down the grain of the wood, they'll come apart in transit. If you lose the blocking on these things, they get rolling around, they will shift on you, and they will shift in a hurry. You cannot haul pipe that does not have chocks on it. It will not stay put, and you're going to end up on the side of the road with the pipe hanging in the sling like a hammock, or worse. In some pipe yards, they may want you to move before the securement process is finished. Just remember, you should move nothing on the deck of a truck that doesn't have 2 tie downs on it. So before you move even 2 or 3 foot straight forward, you need to have at least 2 tie downs. And the first 2 tie downs on a load like this should be the ones at the very end. This one right here is close to the dunnage. It gives a lot of down pressure, It secures everything here and makes sure it stays in the blocks. You also want to do the same thing within the first 5 or 6 foot on the front end of the load as well. We tell our drivers to secure 2 in the first 5 foot of the load and then 1 every 8 foot back over the top. But you got to have 2 to move and start off on the ends. These should be the first ones you put on the very back and again on the very front. What you want to avoid at all times during the loading process is working along the sides of the load. Keep in mind, operators can make mistakes, brakes fail, hydraulics fail, mechanical issues happen that can cause these loads to fall, and you want to make sure you're clear of that. So you never go under a raised load, and never work on the back side of the truck if the forklift or whatever is loading from the far side. Over here, the operator cannot see you, and you run the risk of something rolling off the far side of the truck. Keep in mind as you tighten your straps on this load that you can actually pull material down off the top tiers onto yourself. So as you tighten up, you need to watch the top layers. As I'm tightening up here, I want to stay with the weight above the bar, but I want to watch up top to make sure I don't have anything moving. That way I know something's happening. I'm standing at the end of the load here. If something does move, I can step back and get out of the way. This is the reason why you always tighten the ones on the ends first. That way you've got an out behind me if something starts rolling. Once the ends are strapped down, I'm gonna go down, throw straps over the middle of the load, tighten everything up. Before I leave, I'm gonna check everything one last time to make sure I didn't miss something, make sure my equipment's properly stowed right, then I'm gonna hit the road. When you arrive at your destination, you've still got things you've got to consider during the unloading process as well. One of the first things I wanna do is I wanna take my straps off on the middle first. The reason this, it still leaves my primaries on the very ends that we did as we first loaded up. That way, if something tries to shift, the ends are still held in place. So I'm gonna start off, take all my straps off down the middle. The last strap or chain I always take off the load is the one at the very front and the very rear. When you release this strap, always look up as you release it to make sure the material on top is not moving. If it does move, because I'm standing at the end, it's just a quick step back into safety. The load hits the ground and I'm not under it. So this is where I want to make sure I stay out from under that load. Shifts can happen during the loading and unloading process. Keep in mind the boards that are spaces here could have broken during transit. That will loosen things up and make it where they can roll. You may have lost chocks because they broke or came off in transit as well. The unloading process can be just as dangerous, if not more so, than the loading process. You got to keep your head on the swivel here.